us today is Terry Sylvester from the great state of New York, right? The Empire State. What else do you need to know?
You got me laughing already, but go ahead.
All right. And Terry and I have been in conversation, and he's been up to something for, I guess, a couple of decades, really, and he wants to share that information with us. And so, Terry, thanks for coming on. And so what's going on, and what have you been up to low these decades as far as, I guess, kind of charting and researching things?
Well, first of all, Viz, thanks for having me on. All right, let's see now. The very first 2-3 minutes of this is going to sound, I'm going to jump from 80 to 82 back down to 76, 72, so I'm asking the listeners to just try to pay attention for 3 minutes. But prior to 1980, I was just an old hippie, or probably a young hippie back then. A young hippie, living the young hippie life. Didn't care much for politics. Kept an ear on it, but as far as what the actual issues were, I wasn't really paying attention. And then things changed in 80 when Dr. Kissinger came to town and gave a speech at one of the downtown hotels. And at the speech, he talked about the crisis that America was in, and we were on an irreversible course. And that kind of woke me up. I said, wait a minute, this is the country I love. My father fought for the country. A lot of my relatives fought for the country. Maybe I ought to pay attention.
But Terry, what was the gathering that he would be invited? I mean, that they would want him to speak at something?
It was probably a Rochester movers and shakers type ordeal. It was well attended.
Okay.
I personally wasn't there, Biz. I'm only.
You're not a mover or shaker, huh?
Yeah, I'm not one of them.
Okay.
I'm going to be, though, I'll tell you that.
Oh, you'll shake it, that's for sure. And then you might have to be moving.
Been there, too, Viz. So anyways, that's when I started to wake up. And I got into a project in 1980 where I did something similar to what I'm attempting to do, communicating with you, through you, to your listeners. I came up with this brainstorm at around 3-4 in the morning to come up with an event for Americans on July 4th of 1980 to come out in their yards at midnight, which would be 9 o'clock at night when you got to the coast, and hold a light, a flashlight, a candle. I guess the old hippie was coming out with me in the concerts with the big lighters.
Yeah.
Hold the light in the air as a show of unity. No political message at all. This wasn't for Republicans. This wasn't for Democrats. It was for us as Americans, just to show and look around and see your neighbors at the picnic tables or your backyard barbecues, just to hold the light up for unity.
All right, let me ask you this now. Kissinger's speech was 82, you said, or 80?
Kissinger's speech was in 1980.
Okay, and now, all right. Now, with what you were doing, was this after you heard Kissinger speak?
Yeah,
okay.
Shortly after. So what I did about 3-4 in the morning, I set up my reel-to-reel, and back then Larry King was just on the radio. He didn't have his TV show yet at CNN. And I got myself onto the show, and I'm sitting there with my earphones and recording the show, and I suggested to Larry what my idea was, and to my surprise, although this is what I was shooting for, Larry just loved it, and got right behind it, said keep in touch, anything he could do, he'd help, and he allowed me to give my name and phone number over the air. Now, this is around 3-4 in the morning. So after he listened to the story and he repeated it, we got it square that it was going to be July 4th and not July 3rd. I got this all down on tape. So as soon as I hung up the phone, I was getting calls from all over the country, and this is 3-4 in the morning. People telling me they wanted to get behind it, support it, etc. So the next morning, I was anxious, and I took it down. I lived right up the right down the street from the UPI UPI reporter station office there, and I played him the tape, and he sent it out on the wire. And geez, a week and a half went by, and I didn't hear anything, and so I thought it kind of died. But all of a sudden, matter of fact, we were all sitting around my apartment after hours one night, about 4 or 5 of us, when the phone rang, and it was somebody, it was a DJ from KGO out in San Francisco, saying that he just read about the project, and he wanted me to tell him more about it, and so I started explaining to him basically what I told Larry King about coming out and shining a light, and then I realized that I was on the air, and that was a first for me. So then a series, it proliferated from there, and I don't want to spend too much time. In the long run, it wasn't the success that I hoped it would be, due to my own politicians here in Rochester reluctant to back me, the hippie. And but at that point, I took an interest in politics, and Ed Clark, who was the 1980 Libertarian candidate, just happened to be coming into town within the next few days, and he was going to go to our big 50-watt radio station here in Rochester, and I wanted to. I did some research real quick on libertarians, and at that point I said, "Geez," and it's exactly how I feel. And basically, I still feel as a libertarian. I just could never back their party anymore. But at that point, I started following politics, and I said to myself that I am going to run the presidential campaign for the 1984 Libertarian candidate. That's what I told myself in 1980. So now I'm going forward here now, Biz. Now we're at 82. I'm putting together a strategy for the 84. Now the Libertarians, they aren't even aware of me at this point, and I'm putting together a strategy to run their campaign and developing resume-type letters to send to the national headquarters down in Washington to let them know I'm around. And while I was setting up this strategy, I came across, and now this is where we take off from here. I know I might have been boring people, but here we go. In 1982, as I was doing some reading, I come across this paragraph in a book where David Rockefeller, and again, I'm not getting into trilateral here or CFR, I'm just stating a fact. David Rockefeller said to Zygmunt Brzezinski, who can we get to back in the, and he said, and this was in 82 I'm reading this, but in 73, David Rockefeller says to Zygmunt Brzezinski, who can we get as a Democrat to back in the 1976 presidential campaign? And I thought to myself, Jesus, that's weird. I know he's a globalist, or I do now. I didn't then. I said, but I definitely knew he was Republican. And I said, I put it in the corner of my mind. Why is he looking for a 1976 candidate on the Democratic Party? So I continued shoving that back in the corner of my mind while I went on. I ended up coming down to Florida, right up the road from where you are right now, and I stumbled on to 3 campaigns by accident. I ran down in Florida. I never ran a campaign in my life, and I ran 3 of them. And one of them, the third one, sure enough, I went up to Orlando, and I signed on as communication director at that point, and it was for a radio personality out of Orlando who the Libertarians wanted to have as their candidate in the 1984 election. And the reason why they wanted this radio personality, his name was Gene Burns. Gene is still out in KGO. Funny that got brought up again. But he's out in KGO in San Francisco as a talk show host also out there. Well, I signed on as communication director. I got promoted to campaign director, and we I did that for 2-3 months before Gene decided to fold up his campaign in June of 1983, which disappointed me deeply. But at the same time, as I flew back to Rochester, I realized, well, now I can sit down, get myself a job. A friend had been bothering me to bartend for him. I'll keep in my eye on the 1984 election and see if I'm onto anything here. Well, Viz, you're going to have to probably back this tape up. I forgot to throw in some very valuable information. Okay. Viz, let me stop right here, and I know that I'm tending to start this out on a confusing note, but it's very important that I back up and say, now that I was on my way to running the campaigns down in Florida, I started doing research because of this statement that David Rockefeller had made to Zygmunt Brzezinski. And after I did some research on that 1976 campaign, it was then that it all dawned on me that it didn't matter who the Republican was in 1976, and I don't want to use a God figure's name, but even he running couldn't, with the disgust over Vietnam, Watergate, it was going to be a Democrat.
Well, no, I mean, let me say this. I agree with you fully. I mean, what had happened was most of the nation was obviously manipulated to believe this way, but still the events were so horrendous for the Republican Party at that time because, now you had really about 2-3 years of this whole Watergate thing, and then what happened was you had them going after Spiro Agnew, and then Agnew had to resign, and then of course Kissinger was part of, if you can believe this, and if folks can believe this, and I do, Kissinger was behind, along with Haig, the complete destabilization of Nixon. I think John Coleman was right in saying, it was a petty burglary, and they could have definitely stonewalled around Nixon. They didn't do it. In fact, they started making him a little bit more paranoid. So they give him up. So then you come in with an unelected president and an unelected vice president, one who gets caught on the cover of the Daily News giving a finger to a heckler, and that would be Nelson Rockefeller. So with Vietnam, you're right. With the malaise, supposedly, with the economy and all that, everybody's waiting for a breath of fresh air. And where might that come from? It would be the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and Brzezinski suggests Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy. Yes, good old Jimmy.
Yeah, that's what he suggests.
A charter member of the Trilateral Commission, which David started.
You got it, with Brzezinski.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only one problem with Jimmy, Viz. Nobody knows him. Isn't that great? So this is now where we're going to get going. I'm sorry, folks, that it took me this long to get here. But there's a couple times on your show, Viz, where I've heard you mention about Jimmy after the Ohio caucus having his picture on the cover of both Time and Newsweek.
Yeah, let me be specific. Now, hold your thought, because I don't want to confuse you. But, I mean,
sure.
It might have been... It might have just been Time, I'm not sure. It could have been both. I know that Luce definitely would have thrown his lot in when he was asked to, and that would have been Time. But it could have been both. But the point is, either one, when you start seeing people pop up time and time again with these very, monumental caricature paintings, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And, I mean, I saw Hillary in time gone by, and I said to myself, are we seeing the same thing happen again? So, okay, I just want to be a little specific on that, and I may have not been on other shows, so that's not your fault. But anyway, the point's taken. All of a sudden now we got billboards of Jimmy, right, on magazine covers.
Oh, yeah. And just for your information, it was both covers. And the week after, it was both. In March of 1973, there's a character named Robert Strauss.
Yeah.
And I believe he was a Texas politician, but I can't remember everything. But Robert Strauss, he was a real power broker in the Democratic Party back in the mid-'70s, probably right up to the mid-late '80s. And he one time even led the national DNC.
Mm-hmm.
And in March of 73, he meets Carter down in Atlanta, and he suggests to Jimmy that Jimmy heads the DNC campaign drive for the 1974 midterm elections. Well, Jimmy takes it, and what does that accomplish is him being the national director for the DNC for their 74 drive. That puts him in contact with every power broker at the highest levels, not only nationwide, but statewide in all 50 states and Puerto Rico, Guam, Zam, Hill Carry, wherever you want to say. Jimmy's at the top. He's making friends now. And at that point, they know he's going. I mean, that's the reason why he's appointed to this job, is they know he's going, and they need him to get in contact with these people. So they run into, as Jimmy, one of the people he runs into in this little stint is the campaign director. He runs into a state official in the New Mexico Party. He's a New Mexico Party organizer by the name of Tim Kraft. And Tim Kraft goes up to Ohio and starts the grassroots campaign for Carter in Ohio. Now, what's important to remember here is Iowa is only in the second time, 72 being the first, 76 being the second time that they have held the caucus as we know it today, where it's the first in the nation, and very interesting how they did that by putting it first in the nation, because it was real important then. I think now it's a pain in the butt to them, but back then it was very useful to them, as you'll see with Carter. So anyway, Tim Kraft goes up and lays the groundwork for Jimmy in Iowa. Now, all the other candidates are lingering back in the East, and they're working New Hampshire and all the East Coast, because the Iowa caucus, to this point, means nothing to them. I mean, it was never made anything. It was more or less just a little beauty contest. Nobody jumped all over it, and so they don't bother entering it. So Tim Kraft runs the grassroots campaign and runs into the top of the Iowa. Of course, when I say run into him, it's all been prearranged, but runs into the top Democrat in the state of Iowa by the name of Tom Whitney. Now, what Tom Whitney does is Tom Whitney lets Tim Kraft know that because they are operating under a new format on the Iowa caucus, they are going to have a little straw poll. Excuse me. They're going to have a little straw poll. It's not going to be highly publicized, and it's going to supposedly be more or less just to get the people of Iowa familiar with how you show up at your campaign precincts, et cetera, et cetera. But the only thing is he tells Tim Kraft this, so and only Tim Kraft. So Tim Kraft gets to pack this little beauty poll with all Jimmy Carter people, which of course he wins. Nobody else even contested for it. So there's the beginning of the little mention of Jimmy. Well, follow behind that, Tom Whitney, I should say, then tips Tim Kraft off to the Jefferson Jackson Day fundraiser, which they still do to this day. You're familiar with that, correct?
No, but that's okay. Where's that held? Iowa?
In Iowa.
Yeah.
And it's where all the candidates come, and they prayed out both parties. They come out and Of course, Hillary was the big storm then and this year. And well, anyways, it's called the Jefferson Jackson Day Fundraiser. It's a pretty big dinner. And it's put on by the Iowa D.C. And all the prospective candidates attend, all of them. Everybody shows up for this. But the Des Moines Register and Tom Whitley, again, tips off Tim Kraft that the Des Moines Register is going to run a little polling survey while they're at the dinner and report the results to that of who's leading at this point. Well, Tim Kraft alerts the press that this is going to happen, but as Johnny Apple wrote in the New York Times, Jules Wickover. You familiar with him?
No.
Okay, Jules Wickover describes how the other campaign staffs either, quote, failed to grasp the psychological impact promised by the poll or could not get supporters out in sufficient numbers. Well, that's for us to consume that type of information. The information is the others didn't come because they weren't supposed to.
Right.
So, anyways, at this dinner, it's $50 back in '76. I guess according to what I've got here is my info. I guess $50 was kind of an outrageous price at those in '76. I mean, right now you know two CDs or something. But the dinner is for $50 a couple down on the main floor. But Tom Whitney lets Tim Kraft know that for $2 they're going to sell tickets for Democrats to sit up in the balcony. And he also suggests that they might be able to come and drift down on the floor. And now remember, Tom Whitley's the only one that knows this. The other campaigns supposedly aren't even alerted to this, supposedly. That the other campaigns, that Jimmy Carter's people could play packet again with Jimmy Carter people. Rosalind Carter goes up and puts gigantic Jimmy Carter buttons all on the people that are sitting in the first row of the balcony. So when you look up, that's all you can see is big Jimmy Carter buttons. And sure enough, as the speakers are going on, these $2 people are allowed to drift down on the floor. Geez, how convenient is that? Where subsequently they get polled while they're down there.
Right.
Well, how could you even think of polling them when they're walking around with a big button anyways that says Jimmy Carter? And plus, Tom Whitney also told Kraft to have all your supporters, as they drive in for this dinner, to have all your Jimmy Carter stickers on the back of your bumpers out in the parking lot, because sometimes a reporter or two just happens to drift through the parking lot to see what kind of bumper stickers there are. I'm honest to God, this is what he told him, right? To see what kind of bumper stickers are in the car, to get a feeling of
what's going on.
Yeah, what's going on.
But I mean, what you're saying here, what had happened was this whole thing was stacked to be a very pro-Carter event.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. You said better to me, Viz. So obviously, Jimmy gets the big press. He wins the poll that the Des Moines Register runs down on the floor. He wins it going away, and now, bam, there's Jimmy. He's been brought right into prominence at that point. So the only thing that comes after that is the actual caucus itself, which is only a matter of a couple weeks away. And Jimmy Carter wins that. Although Uncommitted got like 37% of the vote. Jimmy got, 11% or something like that. And then the closest one to him, I think, was Shriver, Sergeant Shriver, with 8.7 or 8.9%. I don't know it. But anyways.
Let me ask you something. Let me hold you off there, Terry. Sure. At that time, because, I'm using my memory, which is a very dangerous thing to do. Who was Jimmy's closest competition? Was it Mondale? In '76?
Jimmy's closest competition is, I got them all written down here somewhere.
Yeah, why don't you just give us a little backdrop about who the names were at that time?
Okay. Let me,
Yeah, take your time. Go take a look. Well, let everybody know we're talking to Terry Sylvester and kind of tapping in onto his political involvement throughout the 80s, late 70s, and he still tracks things to this day. And he wanted to come on and talk about a lot of things that we've been referring to on the Grassy Knoll as far as manipulation of the populace to vote a certain way and other things. But I'll also say while Terry's looking, and one of the things he heard me say too is that I was on a college station in 1976, and when this thing started happening at the beginning of 76 after Iowa and such, I mean, we started getting this rip and read UPI stuff, the old days when you had the real teletype. And, I mean, Carter was just kicking so much butt, and I wasn't paying too much attention to things politically. But it almost got to be kind of like a cult thing at the radio station, like, who is Carter, and why is he kicking everybody's butt? And we just thought this was the greatest, because everybody's, like, into an underdog. But it's like, who's this peanut former governor from Georgia just, you know, kicking butt and taking names? So, have you found out who... Yeah,
Viz. I like listening to you, man. That's why I listen to your show out then.
So I can go on. No, but you know, I never even thought about the competition, and I'll tell you, who would that be at that time, Terry?
Well, we got Birch Bob, Morris K. Udall, Walter Mondale took his first run around the track.
Okay.
And Henry Scoop Jackson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
But that's
those are all players, Viz. Everybody I just named off is a player. Everybody there knows who's going to win already, you know?
Well, you know, the thing is, although Scoop Jackson and Birch Bob and those guys, I mean, those are names we knew, and they were like, you know, long-time people on the Hill. They really weren't charismatic, you know, big-time characters. In other words, what I'm saying is that field was a little stilted, too, for Jimmy to emerge from, which even helps him out even more.
Right.
All right.
Well, what is very important, and this is probably going to be, at least for today, the last primary subject I may get into, because primaries probably bore. Right here, Carter received 27.6 to second place Birch Bob with 13.1. I'm committed 37. That's Iowa caucus. Unfortunately, primaries are very boring, probably, to the average person to have to be told about after they've lived through it this whole winter and spring here, and still going on. But here's the important thing, Viz. The big moves are made during the primaries, during the debates, and sometimes at conventions. But usually they can accomplish, and when I say they, I'm just talking about the establishment. I don't know who the hell the establishment is. You hear Illuminati, you hear bankers, you hear banksters. I don't personally know who they are. All I know is there's people who pull the strings. That's all I know.
But you know, but Terry, remember, you know, you and I are somewhat cohorts. So I mean, think about when we were growing up. The establishment was always a word used by hippiedom and flower power to just stand for the government, and I guess somewhat corporations as well. All the mainstream, in front of us type of entities. Now, as we've gone on, we realize that the establishment, in quotes, is not what we see in D.C. and such, but the characters behind the curtain. Would you agree with that kind of change, perhaps?
Oh, yeah, I'd agree with that. Let
me ask you one other thing, too. Did you ever hear that in some way, shape, or form, pretty much probably covertly, that Carter had a little Kennedy Stardust on him?
Well, elaborate a little bit.
All right, now, I'll tell you what. I know this is big-time urban legend. You know, well, it's not big-time. But I mean, I'm gonna hit this really quick. Harry was in Georgia for some time and ran for mayor. I think, where was his state? Ran for Ware Cross. I can't remember now. Anyway, he was in Georgia, and he got to know people down there. This was after his naval time was done. And the word around Georgia was that, all right, now just take this for what it's worth. And I mean, people have heard the Grassy Knoll, have heard this before, that Carter was a love child of Joe Kennedy and Carter's mother.
Oh, wow.
And that's one of the reasons why he just seemed to get into the Naval Academy, and things went off really well. And that's what...
Well, you know, that's kind of a first for me. If I did hear it, it split my mind. But you know what? No, you got me laughing. I'm picturing Carter with his big teeth looking right at me with that haircut.
There you go.
That's a Kennedy.
But you know, all right, thank you for saying that. But the thing is, you know, I mean, Harry said it, and he's like, I know. He goes, but that's what they were saying down in Georgia. He was a failed mayoral candidate twice in Albany, Georgia. So now, what happens is, when I'm still at the University of the Library, I go walking down the periodical racks, and out of my corner of my eye, I see what I think is one of those caricature portraits of, you know, like I said, we talked about Hillary being in it. I'm seeing Bobby Kennedy. I'm like, why are we doing Bobby Kennedy? I mean, it's like 2005.
Yeah.
And why is Bobby Kennedy on the cover of anything? I go to grab it. It's Jimmy Carter.
You know what, Liz? I do, now that you've told the story right then, what you just told us the past few seconds there, I do remember you saying that before, now that you bring it up. And
you take Bobby, and you take Jimmy, with the crow's feet around the eyes and the big teeth.
Yep.
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
He even wore the hair the same. and it's funny because Kennedy plays big when we get to 1980, which I'm going to get into right now.
Well, thanks
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Terry. I'm just saying thanks for letting me do that because, you know, I'd never had mentioned this to you before, but as we're looking at this kind of meteoric rise of Carter, knowing he's getting a lot of help, I was wondering also if there was talk about, you know, that the Democratic Kennedy Stardust was somewhat on him, and that's what I'm referring to. The point was this a possibility? So anyway.
Yeah, I see it. And it's funny now. I'm gonna tie that in too. I think I might have some here, or you might have some here. Let me just say though, to wrap up Iowa, it was, and this will take 2 seconds. Carter received 27.6. The second place Bob 13.1. I'm committed got 37%. I said that. Shriver came in second. It wasn't. It was Birch Baugh. But anyways, Carter, and it's funny because think about today's elections that are going on right now. They're all saying that, you know, after the caucus or after the primary vote, what state Hillary didn't even stick in the state. She was off onto the next one. You know, you've heard all that, right?
Right.
Didn't even stay there to thank her workers, etc. Well, it's funny. Jimmy Carter wasn't in Iowa the night he won either. He was in New York City waiting for the early morning, I don't know what they're called back then, but your Today shows, your Good Morning Americas, whatever it was called.
Right.
He was already in New York.
He was already in the studios, or near the studios.
He was ready to rock and roll. And so anyways, let's finish it up. And yes, he was on both covers that week in between New Hampshire primary and the Iowa caucus that we just talked about. Now, the 80, this is funny because I was going to move on to the 80 for a minute. And if you remember right at the convention in 80, because Carter supposedly, and I say it's all on purpose, it was all done on purpose, I say that Carter knew he was going to win in 76, and Carter also knew he was going to lose in 1980.
Sure.
And actually, I got a couple incidents in a couple of books, and one being right out of the man's memoirs himself, where Tricky Dick, who even though he was out of power since 74,
right.
Still played a prominent role in not only Republican strategy, because when you get up there, I hate to repeat the old cliche, but when you get to the top, there is no Republicans, there is no Democrats, and if people in the listening audience still believe that, then they probably aren't going to understand anything you and I are talking about, right? They're the same up there. But, Viz, I lost my train of thought.
No, you were going to talk about you're going to wrap something up in Carter had gone to New York.
Yeah, well, I already wrapped up Iowa. In 1980 at the convention, to get Teddy Kennedy into this, if you remember, I know where I was. Jimmy Carter botched everything up with the inflation, the interest rates, the oil embargoes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. failed rescue effort in Iran. And by the way, listen to this. I don't know if anybody really. Every time I bring it up to people, I thought that people would know it, and they don't. December 4th, 1979, was the Iranian embassy
kidnapping and all that?
The United States Embassy in Iran. November 4th, 1979. You know when the election was in 1980? November 4th of 1980. Now I'm going to ask any of the listeners out there to Google what the headlines were in the newspaper, the United States national newspapers, November 4th, election morning of November 4th, 1980, and Google it and bring up those papers. And if they don't have it prominent that it's a 1-year anniversary of the hostages, it's on the front page of every paper, everyone. Now, when you're getting ready to go to the polls, and if you're still undecided because you don't trust Reagan because he's just an actor, but yet Jimmy screwed everything up with inflation, et cetera, once you are reminded that morning at your kitchen table, drinking your coffee, that it's 1 year to the day, I think
and it makes
a lot to move.
It makes Carter seem like a failure, and the point's clear.
Yep.
Can't get anything done, get him out of there.
Yep. Now, your Kennedy, how about the big mystery at the convention was, if you remember, Kennedy put up a vigorous opposition to Carter, which was it was made more vigorous by the press than it really was because all they were doing was trying to just strip Jimmy a little bit anyways. But Teddy supposedly ran a one-man crusade. And it's very rare you challenge a sitting president. Well, Teddy did. And he failed, obviously. And so at the convention in 1980, the Democratic convention, the whole rumor from the very Monday that convention started all the way to Thursday night for Carter's acceptance speech was the rumor is Teddy going to appear on stage? Is he going to appear on stage with Carter, right?
Right.
Well, he eventually, he was late getting there. Obviously that was planned also. He was late. Carter gave his acceptance speech. The balloons wouldn't drop. Do you remember that?
No.
Do you remember? Everything that could go wrong went wrong. They went to pull the cord for the balloons, and the balloons were coming down 2-3 at a time. Matter of fact, they didn't release them until the next morning on Good Morning America, or whatever ABC show of its time was. The next morning, the host of that show released the balloons, so they all came down. Because during Carter's, when they all do their parade and everybody comes out on stage, well, Teddy finally shows up, and he reluctantly shook Carter's hand. And, of course, while he reluctantly shook his hand, all the TV, the big-time reporters, who are all in on all this also, all report, boy, he doesn't look happy, all kinds of adjectives and verbs that you want to come up with about the state of mind that Kennedy looks like right there. And Jimmy has to make another approach to him to go shake his hand, and instead of Kennedy coming to him, and then Kennedy, they say, just gave a flippant wave to the convention crowd and then walked off. But there it is, right there from his opposition to Jimmy all through the primary season to his snub right on stage. And poor Jimmy, he don't have a shot.
No.
And we could get into the 1980 Reagan thing also with how, which is, I think most people know how they pulled the Bush move for the vice president, how it was pulled after hours. You remember all that, correct?
Yeah, we did mention the fact that everybody was kind of stunned that he came out with a late night announcement that Bush, in fact, would be his running mate, and everybody was stunned because it was widely known that there was a great deal of acrimony between Reagan and Bush.
Bush, and I believe it was Iowa. I believe it could have been New Hampshire, but I think it was Iowa in the primaries. That was the famous voodoo economics that Reagan was espousing there during his 80 primary run. But the thing is Gerald Ford was all part of that too. If you or any of the listeners can remember, I keep saying viewers. If any of the listeners...
Well, they might be remote viewers, but that's another whole story.
Don't get me going on remote.
No.
Actually, I could end that conversation in one thing, and it would be the sound of me maybe barfing or something. But anyway.
All right.
But anyways, in the night of Reagan's acceptance speech, before the acceptance speech, Gerald Ford, if everybody can remember, was making the rounds to all the booths because rumors were flying that Jerry was going to be the VP choice and a co-presidency, and everybody was so into that they were saying that's going to be the ace in the hole, that Reagan will win for sure. So Jerry Ford and his wife Betty were making the rounds to all the skyboxes to NBC, CBS, ABC. And not confirming the rumor, but not denying it either. So that kept all the suspense there until Reagan gave his speech. Then, after Reagan gave his speech, then the controllers, the Republican controllers down on the floor, released the news that had everybody just scurrying. All the reporters scurrying to their skyboxes that it's Bush. They had to do it afterwards. If they did it before Reagan's acceptance speech,
he would have been distracted.
Distracted, and
they lied to him thinking he was going to get Jerry, so he could go about whatever he had to do, feeling very, very positively. And then, of course, they grabbed him and said, "Okay, this is the way it really goes," and they sent him back out. And so he realized he was being lied to. And if it doesn't get worse, let's face it, besides the fact that he was being lied to during that period prior to the convention, well, then he goes ahead and he gets, they make an assassination attempt on him 30 days after he's pres, and now he really understands what's going on. So,
yep, he sure does. You just be quiet, Ronnie, and you go out and speak when we tell you to speak. And what impressed, and it's not hard to grasp, what impressed Nixon the most was his saleability. Reagan, I'm talking about. What impressed Nixon about Reagan was Reagan's saleability on TV. I mean, the guy. If one thing about Reagan, he didn't get his facts right, but even when he didn't get them right, he made them sound right.
Well, without a doubt. And here you have the complete opposites. You had Nixon that looked like some kind of gangster on TV. And, did not do well, and that's been, ballyhooed a lot, because...
Can I stop and say, I wonder why he looked like that? But go ahead.
Yeah, that's true.
Go ahead.
I know, but, and here he is, with a handsome and bright and Camelot-like, Kennedy. He's debating, and here's Nixon, with that dark furrowed brow and the sweat above his upper lip. And so, and what is Ronnie? Ronnie is very accustomed to lights, action, camera.
Right.
And so and that's why whenever I hear Rush Limbaugh, when I listen to him, and they go on about the Professor Reagan and Reaganomics and what Ronnie taught us, it was like, oh, will you stop? Don't make me puke. Christmas.
Yep. Yeah. Well, they went. I got to say one thing about Rush Limbaugh. One fast thing. I remember when he first hit, right around real late 80s, early, like I'm saying 88, 89, maybe 91. I listened to him for a couple of years, and then it dawned on me that this guy wouldn't be out saying what he was saying on the most powerful stations in the country, by the way.
Right.
The most powerful wattage. He wouldn't be out there saying what he was saying unless it was supposed to be said. Otherwise, this guy would have been yanked by now, if not dead by now, So anything Rush Limbaugh says, or actually any of these people up at that level, they're saying it's not coming. They have a knack for it to come off the top of their head. Once they've been briefed on what to talk about, they can make it sound homey and like it came out of their mouth. But believe me, they're there for a reason. But anyways, we got off the subject on Rush Limbaugh. He just turns my guts. But go ahead.
No, mine too. But I mean, but like you said, also, I mean, there's a reason why he's there. There's a reason why he's getting paid what he's getting paid. There's a reason why they forgave his little, what shall we say, indiscretions with regard to drugs, and he keeps bouncing back like nothing's ever wrong.
Yeah.
It's like Harry said too. I mean, there was a time when he was listening to Rush and I couldn't do it. I do it now. I guess my blood pressure's a little lower than it was years ago. Maybe not. But I mean, Harry goes, he remembers Rush saying that there was no such thing as a Council on Foreign Relations. And Harry came in and told me that. He's going, I couldn't believe my ears. And so you got a guy, and I mean, I've listened to him lie. I've listened to him to take things and run with them and get everybody to accept his definitions. But for the most part, everybody who calls him anyway, are clawing little sycophants, who just think he's the greatest thing in the world. And I got to believe, when I hear him talk about his network, which is not a network, it's just 3 words, excellence in broadcasting.
Right.
And I'm like, there's times when I know he's putting on the dog and laughing his butt off that he's got his own people, his own followers, just lapping his stuff up like, yeah, you're right, Rush, when Rush knows he's nothing short than a P.T. Barnum.
Yep. Oh, ditto.
Yeah, Megan, ditto. Shut up, you little creeps. I know, I listen to all these little droogies called in. Megan Prop, shut up. God almighty.
All right, listen, can I stop and say one thing here?
Well, yeah, sure.
All right. I think we've got a few more minutes, and I'm just trying to give people a taste. I don't want somebody to say, geez, he named off one thing two things that happened at the conventions, and he's saying that the elections turned on those 2 events. No, those are just 2 of maybe a handful of things that happened. I could have got into things up in the primary season where a matter of fact, I am going to bring this up for a minute.
I tell you what, we've got about, and I'm not going to stop you at the hour if it's not, we don't have to worry about getting blown off by another show. I mean, obviously, it's just me out here.
Right.
But, I mean, if you want to address, let's get a little specific. I mean, like I said, you can't hit everything in 1 hour. And, you've never really broken this out for dissemination in a radio format.
You're the first.
Yeah, and I mean, no one's going to fault you for your timing or what it takes. No, don't worry about that. So what I would say is, I mean, if you're going to be indicting, if you want to just focus for the rest of the time we got, and we'll say, 15 minutes, whatever, 20. Why don't you get very specific so that you are backing up more or less what we've alluded to?
Okay. Well, let's jump back to the New Hampshire primary of 1980. 2 nights, or Sunday night before the Tuesday primary. So basically, that's 2 days before the primary. One of the New Hampshire newspapers is going to have a debate, but they want the debate to be, now listen to this setup. This is a setup all the way. They want the debate to be only between Bush and Reagan. They don't want Dole up there. They don't want Phil Crane up there, et cetera, et cetera. And so anyways, it appears that everybody's going to go along with this. Well, Bob Dole, who someday we'll get into Bob Dole, too, another guy that's crooked as they come.
And refers to himself as Bob Dole, yeah. Bob Dole doesn't think that. Yeah, okay, all right.
But anyway, Bob Dole is the one to point out to the newspaper that you can't do this. You can't exclude the other en masse, the other 4 or 5 candidates, because that amounts to somehow it came up to where it would be a campaign contribution to each of Reagan and Bush, but and the others would falter on it. So sure enough, it gets ruled on, and it is. They have to, if the paper is going to hold a debate, they are going to have to include the other candidates. But Ron Reagan comes forward and says, wait a minute, I'll pay for the debate. That way, that doesn't hold the New Hampshire newspapers under any responsibility of campaign contributions. And we'll do it the way, since I'm paying for it, we'll do it the way I'm paying for it, so this is the way it'll be done.
Right.
But what he does is he springs, right as the debate's ready to start, he springs and brings up Dole and Crane and geez, I don't know if Ford was there or not, but he brings up the other candidates on stage and starts to go into a monologue of why these other candidates aren't. He's got them standing there now so everybody can see him, and Ronnie's explaining that the reason why these candidates aren't allowed into the debate is because of this and that, and all of a sudden somebody says, on mic, I love these on mic things, they happen, there's one or two every election here. My friend Diane gets a kick out of them too. On mic, somebody says, hey, turn off the mic, because he's reading the riot act to everybody for not allowing these other candidates up here. And they say, turn off the mic. And that's when he turns and points and says, I paid for this mic. You know the famous quote, right? Mm-hmm. And what did he say? I paid for this mic, so don't turn it off or leave it on. In other words, he paid to have that campaign, and don't turn the mic or that debate. And
it's my bat and ball, and I'll go home when I want to, yes.
Yeah. Over in the 1984 campaign, if you just want to jump around a little bit right here, there's not too much on the 84 campaign that I really want to get into today. There's a ton of it. I never even got into the stolen debate book that ended up into Reagan's camp for the one and only debate between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan.
Well, no, go back to it and don't jump. Get ahead and do it. And let's finish up with that. Yeah, sure. Let's do it with that and tie it up before we get to 84.
All right. Well, this doesn't come out until 1983, and because they tried to stop it, first of all. But David Stockman, who became, I believe, the budget director in the Reagan cabinet, goes back to his hometown in Indiana on the morning of the debate that Reagan and Carter are going to have that night, and speaks before a luncheon that was sponsored by the Castle-Opolis Optimist Club. So I don't know what it is. It's got something to do with Castle-Opolis, Indiana. And at the speech in the morning before the debate, he makes a joke, and he says, I'm glad to see there are so many optimists left in Cass County, Stockman said. I felt you might have dwindled to only 3 or 4 after 4 years of Carter. Ha ha ha, all the laugh, right? He says, then he goes on to say, in this speech, this talk, I spent the weekend as Carter. Now, he was Reagan's Carter when they practiced for the debate.
Right, I got you.
He said, I spent the weekend as Carter. That's why I'm so confused and disoriented. Then everybody laughed again. Then he goes on, and this is quote, utilizing a pilfered copy of the briefing book he was going to use, Stockman deviated from the usual, and then he goes on and he explains this. He explains what everything is going to be said that night at the debate. He explains what Carter's going to say. He explains how Reagan is going to answer it. And not only that, but he's correct. Those things actually happen. So it doesn't get brought out until 1983, which is obviously 3 years after it happened. And, of course, the Democrats are going to have a big investigation. Congressman George Micker, whatever his name is, he's going to have a big investigation. We know these investigations don't go anywhere.
No.
Everybody's got to realize that by now. And don't please, listeners, don't tell me the blue dress. But anyways, this gets brought out 3 years later. So now they're supposedly going to have an investigation. Nothing comes of it. Well, I think they missed the real story. They made the real story that Stockman came out with the exact way that Jimmy was going to answer and the exact way that Reagan was going to answer. What I want to know, this is me, how did they even know what the moderators were going to ask?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You get it?
Sure, of course I do, because the questions may not be softball, but the questions are known, and they get to research it, so they all look like they know what they're talking about.
Yep.
That's such a joke.
Yep, exactly. So in now I'll go up to 84. I just had to bring the briefing book. What a joke that is. It wasn't pilfered. It was Jimmy Carter knew that he had it. He acts, to this day, still acts indignant that Reagan had it. Well, come on, you probably handed it to him yourself. But anyways, in the 84 election, just to touch on a few things, I get since Ferraro is in the news here lately, Geraldine Ferraro, our great Geraldine Ferraro. Let me work her into our conversation a little bit. Gary Hart in 84 Mondale was the man. Super delegates, everybody was all backed up by Mondale. Backing Mondale. But Gary Hart was really acting up. Of course, Jesse's in there too. We'll talk about Jesse some other time. Gary Hart is really acting up. He's actually putting on a push that like a Barack Obama push, actually, where it's going to be hard not to give him the nomination. But they did. And one thing Hart came on record of saying during the primary season, or anyways up before the Democratic Convention in 84, Gary Hart makes it well known that if you choose me as your nominee, I'm going to pick a woman VP. Well, right away, the League of Women Voters, the NOW movement, National Organization of Women, they all tell Mondale, you better do the same thing, or during the convention, we're going to boycott and walk out in the middle of your speech. So that pretty much puts the heat on Mondale to have to nominate a woman. So what they do is they go on a committee to interview prospective candidates, and they boil it down to Ferraro, and then it turns out, after she's been named, picked, coronated, the whole bit, it turns out that things might be not kosher in her family. Some have even suggested maybe even mob ties. Some have suggested their taxes weren't right. You know, they just started ripping her right there. So when the press that still was honest, not the players in the press, but the press that was still honest, when they asked Mondale and his group, how could you have made such a major blunder and picked Geraldine Ferraro with all this baggage? You know what their excuse was? Their excuse was, their convention was in San Francisco that year. Their excuse was that although they brought in their FBI or wherever they have to interview and do background checks on every candidate they interviewed for the job, they didn't with Geraldine because she was the chairperson for the Democratic Platform Committee, and they didn't want to deviate, or they didn't want to get her attention away. They didn't want to get her attention. They wanted her to keep it on her job as the chair of the Platform Committee, right? And that's their excuse. And let me tell you another interesting story. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. Unfortunately, I don't have this on tape, and I would love to have somebody. I know they probably got it at the Annenberg School, either in Maryland or at Penn State, and they've got to have it at maybe, well, CNN wasn't around, but there's got to be. On August 17th, notice I don't have this on tape, but notice the impression this what I'm going to tell you made on me. On August 17th, 1984, I pick up a good friend of mine from work, and we go back to her place after work. So we're sitting on the couch, and I got the 6:30 news on. And the news was Mondale was still in his process of picking out who he hadn't named Ferraro yet. And the piece starts out with Reagan first, and they got whatever they did on him, but they got Reagan walking through the Rose Garden with his head down, and he's got his probably Bush and all his big boys around him, and they're all huddled. You can't hear what they're saying. And as soon as the voiceover of the piece, everybody's familiar with news, there's the reporter's voiceover. At the right time, Reagan then turns, faces the cameras that they had, or the microphones they had set up, and says his piece. Then they go, and meanwhile, in Minneapolis, then they go to Mondale. And they got Mondale walking through kind of a wooded path. It looked like a woods, and it was a wooded path. And he's doing the very same thing as Raggy. He's got his head down. He's talking to all his honchos and all that. And then all of a sudden, when he turns around and faces the camera, and when he faces the camera, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And I turned to Judy next to me on the couch, and I didn't realize that she had nodded out. And I turned around and said, "Look at that." And I startled her. She jumps up from her nod on the couch, and she looks at the TV screen, and she goes, "Look how small Mondale is." Viz, what they did is they took Mondale and put him down in the corner of the screen. Now, I don't know if these guys behind them were actually 7 foot taller. They hit him on boxes. I don't know how they did it. But anyways, here was these 4 or 5 giant men with little Mondale way down in the corner of the screen. And, man, as soon as I saw that, Viz, I wished I had it on tape, and I don't. But I wish somebody would look that up for me, send it to me. I'd love to own it.
So are you dare suggesting that the way they shot that video was obviously to make Mondale look diminutive and
no doubt about it. It happens all the time.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
It happens all the time. I got more for you, but we won't get into them today. So anyways, small, and then something that I brought up to you before also, but when Mondale, and when I was doing the 84 election, that was the first one. All my research at this point had only gone back to the 76 election, and I didn't have any tapes or anything. That was all done off of books, libraries, the stacks down in the morgue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was all my research for the 76 and 80 election. Now I'm actually doing the 84, but I didn't have a VCR yet. So I was still only putting a microphone up to TVs and that, and using cassette tapes. So 84 is only on cassette tape. After that, everything's on VHS, being converted now over to DVD. But I'll never forget, I'm laying in bed that night, and I got the TV on, and I got my recorder. I got a chair up by the TV, and I got my TV on a chair right by the bed, and I got my recorder by the speaker, and Mondale's giving his acceptance speech, and he in the middle of his speech, he looks at the crowd and he goes, "My opponent says he won't raise taxes." He says, "But I'm up here to tell you that I will raise taxes." I literally came up off the bed and I went, "What, Mondale?" Now I knew I was onto something. I go, "You're toast, buddy." And Elizabeth Drew, who's back in the 70s and 80s, was a very famous historian. I hope she's still alive. I haven't checked, but she used to write books on the 88 election, 84 election. And she asked the question to Mondale's aides of why they would allow him to go up there on the podium that night and say he was going to raise taxes. And his aides, and I believe him too, because his aides told Elizabeth Drew, we had no idea he inserted that that he was going to insert that in there. Otherwise, they would have stopped him from it. You just don't stand there and tell the voting public. Even if you know you got it, you don't tell them you're going to,
Yeah, but it's not a stretch because most of people are going to listen to this, understand how it goes anyway. But that to me is just representative of the fact that, you got your people who are in your campaign and such, and they're really dedicated to getting the candidate elected. And then there are those who are the handlers who, after the people who prep for the candidate are done, the handler comes in and all of a sudden you have something like this happen, and they all look at each other like, where did that come from? And so there you have the way things really go.
Yep.
Well,
go ahead. What are you going to say?
Well, I mean, what I want to do is, in a way, I'd like to bring it to an end for now, just this segment. But, the other thing I was wondering about, I guess maybe it's not along the same tack, but again, here you have Hillary Clinton having these false reminiscences, if you will, of her appearance in Bosnia.
Right.
And, I mean, she says it not only once, she said it 3 times. And I'm saying to myself, why in the world would you allow her to go through this, quote, war story when you know that people were around to video it and she could get trapped in it? I mean...
Exactly.
I mean...
Well, we don't know the answer to that yet,
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe here's what I'm thinking. One, the Clintons are such excellent, entrenched, inveterate liars that they actually, probably in their psyches, believe it happened. Two, how could she even go along with it if she knew it weren't the truth? I mean, did they do this so that she would trip and fall? Was this taking a fall for Obama?
Well, you got a third thing you want to say, or can I jump in?
I'm looking for a third one. I think I had it, but go ahead.
All right. Well, all I can say is I pretty much have completed my project right after the 2000 election, and we should come on sometime, and we got to get into all that. But I want to tell people what the 2000 election was really about, and that's going to probably take a show or two of it, or a show on itself, or half a show anyway.
Okay.
But all I want to say about Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama is they are definitely players together. Why do I know this? Because again, I go back to the '76 election, a little bit in the '72. Actually, I just a little bit tinkered with the '72, but I go from the '76 election right to where we are now, 204. Forget 208's still being played, so that's why I say up to 204. And everybody there was all working together. They were all synced together, whether it was the Republican and the Democrat, whether it was Kerry against Bush or Bush against Gore. They're all players. They're all on the same team. And I can't allow myself to even think that Barack's for real on his own. You know what I mean? It hasn't happened before, and Barack's a player. Now, what they've got in store here, I don't know. I think we're all going to have to sit down and watch it. But I do know that this schism that has been created to us through the press and whatever, that they're really going at it tooth and nail. That's a bunch of bunk. I just don't know where they're headed on it yet. That's all.
But, I mean, none of these people who are in this position are clean. And, I mean, whether it's Obama, whether it's Hillary, and everybody before then. So we're not just picking on Obama because he's black or Hillary because she's a woman. Look, we've been saying this for a long, long time. And that is, if you get to that point, you're a made person, and if you don't go along with the project, well, some bad things can happen to you. Or, like Gary Hart, you get disgraced. Or like Nixon, you get disgraced. Some people get assassinated like Kennedy. Yeah, it's dirty. The whole thing is dirty, and it's never going to get clean, and it hasn't been clean throughout probably most of the 20th century.
Yep.
So, who knows where they're going with this? I always thought, who cares what I think? But, again, as we've spoken about and you've heard me say, and that is why would they remake Hillary when they could have just let her fade away?
Yep.
So for her to fall short, after all that's happened with her becoming the senator, and again, her being lionized in magazines and such, now she looks like she's the underdog. Well, she is the underdog compared, but that's what they tell us.
That's what they tell us.
But you know what would happen is, since she hasn't quit, what happens if she comes roaring back and, she becomes the comeback kid? What great resilience. This is the person we want, a real, junkyard dog. Once, she affixes herself to your leg, you can't shake her. There's all kinds of good things that can come out of an underdog coming from nowhere. But I will say this. No matter what happens from this point onward, if Obama doesn't get the nomination for the presidency, or at least for the candidacy from the Democratic Party, this will exacerbate race relations.
Oh, yeah.
And this also goes along with what's also happening with the continuing militarization and radicalization of illegal Latinos. There is a brother out of Atlanta who emailed me, and he said that he thought that, if something were to happen to Obama, are we looking at some kind of, race relation exacerbation? I said, of course. And I think one of the things that's going to go on in the United States is that you're going to see polarization and, balkanization, if you will, between Anglos, blacks, and Latinos. And it's the perfect recipe for chaos, which I think they're bringing to us from this point until, whatever, 2011 or 12 or whatever. Go ahead, Terry. No sweat.
Well, I kind of have kept, even in public here when I'm discussing, I've tried to keep away from if Obama is for real, if he is, which I just got done saying he's a player with Hillary, but if he is for real, there's nothing good that's going to happen. There's nothing good that's going to happen to that man. And then what you just brought up comes into play, and those are things I try not to talk about because it's being talked about in the press now. But
no, it's volatile. It's unpleasant.
Yeah, and but if he's for real, and I don't think he is personally, but if he is for real, putting up a challenge to Hillary, I hope this man has his ducks in a row because St. Peter demands it, Well, and you got to get by St. Peter before you see the big guy, but all right, I know I'm kidding. Listen, real quick about Gary Hart. It's funny. I'm glad you brought me back around to him because in '84, with the barrage that he put on against Mondale, and with the big demonstration, I don't know if you remember the night they gave him the floor to speak, but he spoke before Cuomo, and they just gave him a rousing demonstration because of the run he put on. And I was still new in my project then, and I said, gee, was Hart for real, or was he just running interference like the rest of them? And unfortunately, I had to wait till '88 to have that question answered. And like you just said, they answered that real quick in '88, didn't they?
Yeah, sure they did.
And it took him right out quick.
They did. And yet, you know what? He has lived happily ever after in the Council on Foreign Relations, and this guy has pointed, or has run point, on terrorism in America, and are we prepared? And I want to remind everybody that Gary Hart, when he was in an interview, I think it was on Hannity and Combs, talked about, and I mean, I kid you not, I saw it on CNN, and it was transcripted, but he talked about the fact that it was very possible that there would be some kind of detonation, either in Cleveland, Dallas, or Denver. And that's all gone by the boards. No one's ever questioned it, but my point is, when guys take the fall for the cause, whether it's George Tenet, whether it's Al Gore, or Gary Hart.
Nobel Peace. If you're Al Gore, you win the Nobel Peace Prize.
That's what I'm saying. You get paid back. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
These guys fall on the sword. They go away. So here's Gary Hart, who got blown up, plus the fact that, he invited people to check his private life and they found Donna Rice in it. You dumbhead.
She wasn't bad looking either, but go ahead.
No, and I mean, whatever, we're at Spencer, but it's like when you do these things, you got skeletons, and they know it, and they're going to call it on you, because they're all dirty, but when you run afoul, they're going to pull this stuff out.
Yep.
And so he went down the elevator, but because he's with the boys, they resurrected him with his Council on Foreign Relations and his involvement with what the CFR is doing with the building of a North American community, also known as the North American Union.
You got it.
So, I mean, don't feel sorry for them, man, because, believe me, when they take a dive, there's a lot of padding down there, and they'll be okay.
Yeah, when Gore got nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, which is a joke in itself. Like somebody said, if anything, it should be for science, if even that. But I mean,
that was for fiction, yeah.
Yeah, but I was telling people even before he won it, I go, this is his payback, man, for what he did in 2000. Yeah. It's his payback. What do you want to do here? I mean,
all right, let's keep
going.
No, let's tie it up now because we've got more to go, and you've got an idea now about how much we covered. I think it was you that said to me one time when I-Man said I got 15 pages and we did 2 hours. He goes, well, I still got another 11 to go or something like that.
He said he had 17. That was great. That's one of my favorite interviews, by the way. I've listened to that several times. I'm trying to absorb that. But
I mean,
he said he had 17 pages and he only hit 4. So
that's what I'm saying. And again, I-Man was not somebody given to doing a lot of radio or anything like that. And that's only Newman, and that's okay. But now you understand, too, how far we go. And you've got a lot more stuff, and that's why I caution you and say, look, don't try to shoot the whole thing in an hour, because I'd rather do hour segments. And if you're okay with coming back repetitively...
oh, yeah, man, I was hoping you'd ask, because I got a ton here.
Well, and there's some other stuff, like you said, you threatened.
Oh, yeah. That's coming down to it. Hey, listen, I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
I want to apologize to the listeners. Is this going to make it on tape? Is this going to make it onto the tape?
Well, on tape, and if you want it to, it will.
Yeah, I wanted to.
Okay.
I want to apologize to the listeners that it took me so long to start this off between 80, 82, how I got where I am. And I think after we hit the 76 Jimmy Carter caucus, I think we were starting to move pretty good then, you know. And I just want to apologize. I know it was a little confusing the first 10 minutes.
No, I mean, listen, we jumped around in time periods. We did a little time travel. But the other thing is also, there are a lot of people who listen who are far younger than we are, and it's a little historical background. Not that they haven't read and such, but, you know, it's nice to hear from somebody who lived it. And so that trip down, you know, backwards is not at all distracting. That's why I said to you, you know, when we got to that point of going in further, you wanted to go back, and we can do that. But, I mean, you know, the MP3s are re-listenable too, and if there's anything a little rough in there, that's not a problem. But again, I mean, you're a novice at this, though. You've done the research, and you've obviously had an interest in the way primary's going and such for pretty much now, 32 years?
I started it. I physically started on it in 1982.
Yeah.
My light was turned on in 1980.
All right, and then you go back, you know, to 76, where some of this all starts with Carter. So what I mean is that, you know, this has been some kind of an avocation for you, a deep interest that you've watched. And so, hey, you know, it's okay. And, you know, we'll have emails too, and people will ask questions, and we can refine things. But you were there. You got involved politically much far beyond what I did. And, well, I mean, to give you an example, I was in the FBI in 76. So what does that tell you?
Well, I got things to tell you, too, but we'll do that later.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I want to give my email address. Can I?
Go for it.
I don't have a website, at least yet. And but my email is Terry Sylvester, all one word, TerrySylvester. That's Terry Sylvester at myway.com. MYWAY.com. And what I want to put my email out there is maybe somebody can find me that August 17th, 1980 CBS 6:30 News tape, and plus any other info or questions or anything.
You'll get them.
Pardon?
You'll get them.
Okay.
But repeat what you be looking for with regard to a video archive with CBS. It would be when?
It was where they put Mondale little on the screen with the giants surrounding him was August 17th, 1980, CBS 6:30 News. 6:30 Eastern. That was Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time News.
Gee, was that the third anniversary of Elvis's death? I'm not sure, but okay. No, I'm only kidding. All right.
No. Hey, I'm in a place one time. Well, let's say it. I'm in a bar, right? And I'm just getting ready to walk out the door, and it was bartender shift, and Larry, the night bartender, comes running in the door, and he looks right at me because I was getting ready to go out the door, and he goes, "Have you heard the news?" And I said, "What?" He said, "The king is dead." And I just stood there. Yeah, who's the king? You know?
Yep.
And, okay, all right. I mean, I did feel bad, don't get me wrong, but anyways.
I never met a Christian I didn't like. Anyway, we'll move on.
Well, listen, Biz,
Yeah.
it was great talking to you. I would like to take you up on more shows.
Yeah. Well, we'll do it until we get it done. That's what I'm saying. So now you know how much we can cover, and there's much more. And I would tell folks you're not wasting your time listening to this because it's just getting going. So, no, Terry, we're going to do this again. Not to be generous with your time, but if you've got it to do a couple of segments, let's do it.
All right, great. I'm ready as soon as you want to go. Give me 3-4 days. I pretty much got all the information here. I just want to get it all together. I'm dying to get into some Jesse Jackson stuff.
Hammertown. Hammertown, don't let me down. Oh, that was beautiful when that happened. No.
You know what I call him? And it's got nothing to do with his color, listeners, so don't think that I'm getting into that. But if you stop and think about it, and maybe I'll let you think about it, and then I'll give you the answer the next time I'm on. But I call Jesse Jackson Brother Goose.
Brother Goose?
Yeah, think about it.
Send your emails to TerrySylvester@myway.com. And, but I mean, he did that in New York, and I couldn't believe it. He got caught, on somebody's hidden mic. Yeah, but that's the way it goes. It's no big deal.
Yep.
All right.
The hidden mics. I love the hidden mics. Yep.
Oh.
Okay.
We'll see you soon.